27-24. It took late game heroics once again from Shedeur Sanders. Much better, much quieter. I actually spoke in that video for over 30 minutes, if you'll believe it, and I was talking over that noise the entire time. As I was re-listening to it, I realized that really wasn't a pleasant experience, so I figured I ought to re-record this, and that's what's happening. CU outlasts ASU 27-24, and it comes down to another fourth quarter game-winning drive from Shedeur Sanders, whose college legend continues to grow. This kid has the clutch gene, and Shedeur has made some huge plays in the first half of the season for the Colorado Buffaloes and came up with some big ones down the stretch tonight to lead the Buffs back. They didn't take their first lead in this game till the beginning of the fourth quarter. And look, this is a player who has now stepped up to a new level and is excelling to the point where he's covering up for a lot of his team's deficiencies. Another slow start for the Buffaloes. That's 5 consecutive games now where the Buffs have not started well. And Coach Prime in tonight's presser was furious about it. He's had it. He's had it with the amount of times that Colorado has let Shedeur be hurried, pressured, or sacked. He's had it with the amount of special teams miscues. He's had it with the undisciplined football. Penalties in the first half really plagued Colorado. A 3-and-out, yet again, I think that's 3 straight games with a 3-and-out to begin their very first drive. Colorado spots ASU a touchdown, and luckily this game was only one score. In Oregon, they spotted them 2 touchdowns. USC, they spotted them 21-0, and tonight just 7-0 for Arizona State. Obviously, that with one score game being a margin that Colorado can come back from, especially against a team the caliber of Arizona State. Now, credit to Kenny Dillingham. I thought he had his guys ready to play tonight. They gave Colorado just about all they could handle, starting their third-string quarterback in Trent Bourget, who had that career day last year in Folsom Field. He had a very nice game tonight. I thought he did enough to give ASU a chance to win, and they almost did. They nearly did, coming back, tying the game 24-24. Unfortunately for Arizona State, they left way too much time on the clock for Shedeur Sanders. Had they not left that much time on the clock, they left 50 seconds, and Colorado, I believe, at that stage had 2 timeouts. Had they not, I wonder if Dillingham goes for 2 in the win there, especially at home. They already being, 1-4 this season, self-imposed postseason ban. What do you have to lose, right? But they had too much time left for Shedeur Sanders in Colorado. And with 50 seconds left on the clock, first play, Shedeur 43 yards down the left sideline, completes man-to-man coverage to Javon Antonio. Massive, massive catch. Now with Javon Antonio, he was the grad transfer in from Northwestern State. This was the guy who we had seen make huge plays throughout spring practice, throughout preseason practice. This was a player that we all expected heading into the year to contribute significantly on a game-to-game basis. Well, he got a little bit banged up before the TCU game, ended up not really producing at all down in Fort Worth. Then he was out the next 2 weeks, came back and really wasn't himself up until the point where he either got benched or he was a little dinged up, but it feels more now like it was benched against USC, and then obviously Omarion Miller comes on, almost 200 yards receiving in the second half alone for Miller. And Javon this week was actually relegated to practicing with the tight ends. Colorado doesn't have a lot of big body skill position players, and Javon is one of them. And so he was actually practicing with Tim Brewster and Mikey Harrison, the tight ends this week, which, I mean, a guy coming into your program as a grad transfer, he expects to be one of your starting wide receivers, and now he's with the tight ends. That's a big motivating factor, and he got an opportunity to prove himself because Omarion Miller wasn't getting the job done tonight. He could not replicate the type of success that he had last week at home against USC. Well, Antonio comes into that game and has a huge touchdown catch on the slant, the play action pass slant, to give Colorado their first lead in the fourth quarter, which I think it might have been his second snap. And then later, obviously, making some huge grabs, culminating in that 43-yard grab that pretty much, for all intents and purposes, with 50 seconds on the game clock there in the fourth quarter, 24-24 the score, put Colorado into field goal range. A few plays later, Alejandro Mata steps up and drills a 42-yarder. Dillingham tries to ice him. I'm not exactly sure if he made the kick when he tried to ice him or not, but either way, he stepped up when it mattered most. and drilled it, man. And the early Steph Curry look away, right? How cool was that? And then the moment with his teammates and celebrating with Coach Prime. Prime kind of shoved him back out onto the field to give him his shine there for a minute. He did his little, field goal celly there and came back and dapped up Prime. And look, Prime has taken a lot of heat, specifically from people like me who, nothing against Alejandro Mata. I think he's an excellent human being. He's a wonderful young man. I had a chance to sit down and talk with him one-on-one during Football Media Day. Absolutely a great kid, and you understand why Coach Prime wants kids like him and his character around. But there were question marks about his leg strength and coming into this program. And Mata, look, I mean, those are several huge field goals that he made for this team tonight. And full credit to him and Coach Prime for the belief that he has in Mata. And Mata stepped up in a huge way, an awesome moment for him with the game-winning field goal. But Colorado did not show out and show up for this game. And that's like I said, the 5th consecutive slow start. And Coach Prime in the presser was livid. This was the maddest that I've ever seen him, at least personally, right? This is, short of an incident with Tim McCarver, the maddest that I've personally ever seen him. And it was because he knows how much more this team is than what they have shown, specifically at the first and second quarters of these last several games. It has killed them, right? He talked about the holes that they're digging for themselves and the fact they're shooting themselves in the foot, making so many, self-inflicted mistakes that's really hurting them, be it penalties, be it pressure allowed on the quarterback. He's had it. I mean, that's another game where Colorado allows an opponent 15 plus sacks plus tackles for loss. Shadour's the most hurried, pressured, and sacked quarterback in the country this year. That's a significant issue. And up front for Colorado, that offensive line was awful tonight. They ran the ball effectively. I thought they needed to do it more often. Anthony Hankerson on first and second down. He was really effective, ripping runs off at about 5 yards a carry. Dylan Edwards, they're still using a lot of him between the tackles on first and second down. And look, I understand doing that because you don't want him to be a tell, right? You don't want to tip off the defense that this is going to be a swing pass. This is not going to be a run in the A or the B gap because you've got Edwards on the field. But at the very same time, I think while you can still do it, you don't have to do it as much, I think, as they're utilizing that right now. Just a little personnel thing there. Colorado in that first half, obviously, first drive, 3 and out. Second drive, that was a huge tell for me about how this game was going to go. Coach Prime on Tuesday in the Well-Off Media video addressed the team about slow starts and said that he himself was going to personally address it. Well, it either fell on deaf ears or they couldn't execute it or the message didn't hit home, which I think is a frustrating position for anybody to be in, but specifically for him who prides himself on his messaging and his communication. I think it really frustrated him tonight and he boiled over. You could tell on the sideline he was discontent. I think the foot was really bothering, and that heat, guys. 103 degrees at kickoff. The entire first half, the opposing sideline, Colorado's sideline, is in the direct desert sun. That sun is unforgiving. It's a killer. And in the second half, the sun left the field of play. But that first half, I thought, I don't know how much it really affected them, except for maybe the people who were on the sideline. Obviously, adrenaline kicks in the game, but you can't get away from just how hot it is down here, considering the early kickoff time at 3:30, right? It was still nice. It's damn near 90 degrees right now. Colorado has to find a way to come out with more confidence. The team that came onto the field in Dallas against TCU, that was a confident bunch. The confidence level of this team is not what it was then. Now, they're clearly missing their best player offensively and defensively. And it's not just that they're missing Travis Hunter, it's they're missing his chemistry with Shador offensively. It's not like he's a gadget guy. He's wide receiver 1. He's the guy you go to on third downs. He's the guy you go to when you need a big play. And there were several big moments already this season that Travis has shown up in a huge way. And right now he's just not there. Now, that being said, obviously, huge loss. Not having one of the most talented, if not the most talented player in the entire country. That being said, Colorado is way too talented to have that much of a drop-off. I know there's a domino effect with his absence. I get that. He's not out there, then everybody else gets bumped up a slot and everybody else is asked to do more. But it shouldn't be that significant of a drop-off where confidence-wise, they still have some serious talent on this team. And I don't know what it is about getting out, to better starts and really just coming to play with more confidence. It's not like Coach Prime can motivate them more. I mean, maybe he can do it differently. And certainly I think he's going to have some period of reflection this week on what he can do, because he's just at the end of his rope. They're 4-2. And if you ask Buff fans before the year if they would sign up after 6 games, after halfway through the season, to be 4-2, I mean, they've already smashed their win total. There was heavy juice under 3.5 wins. Vegas expected them to be under 3.5. And as I told the folks in the desert that I know, you guys got this one wrong before the year. This team has much more potential than just a 3-win bunch. And halfway through the season, they've already gotten to 4. So that alone is a massive win. And we always talk about everything being gravy. To me, before the year, you get CSU, you get Nebraska. The rest is gravy. I mean, obviously, the goalposts have since moved, and it's amazing to see the progress they're making. They've got a legitimate shot to go to a bowl, right? And I think next week against Stanford is another one of those you gotta have them games. You've gotta beat teams you're supposed to beat. And tonight, it may have not been pretty, but that's a Pac-12 conference. Colorado never plays well down here in Tempe. Arizona State is a pesky program. It's been a very good program. Now, I know Kenny Dillingham is doing a little bit of a smaller version of what Coach Prime is doing, but look, at the end of the day, this is still Pac-12 play. These guys want to beat you. Colorado has a giant target on their back. As much as Coach Prime doesn't really want to say publicly that, acknowledge that they do, they have a huge target on their back. They absolutely do. And you're going to get opposing teams' best shot every week. And tonight, this afternoon with Trent Bourget, Arizona State's 3rd-string quarterback, they got a really good shot from a not so great football team. Arizona State isn't very good. They're now 1-5 on the year. Clearly self-imposed ban, postseason ban. I feel bad for those kids, but that's not a good team. And that's why Coach Prime was upset, is because he knows a bad team gave them a better fight than they probably should have, considering the fact that Colorado could not just get the offense off the ground. I think there are some moments when Sean Lewis has shined. It's been up and down, right? This is the first half of the season, first 6 games of this tenure. But there's been a little bit too much down compared to how much real up that there has been the last, dating back to CSU, really. I mean, dating back the last, 1, 2, 3, 4 games? Yeah, you gotta be dialed in a little bit more, and maybe it's just a disconnect between offensive coordinator and quarterback, or maybe it's just schematically how they want to be. And we talked about this after Oregon. Are you beholden to what you want to be, or are you adapting to what you need to be? And I actually mentioned that to one of our media brethren tonight. I said that exact phrase, and I've been talking about it now for the last several weeks, that this coaching staff needs to adapt more because they don't have enough of their own guys in the building yet to what they need to be rather than what they want to be. If that means running Shedeur Sanders more in the first and second quarter, you got to do it. It's a whatever it takes mentality to win in the Pac-12 conference, to win in Division I football. This, like I talked about after the Oregon game, there are some things that, okay, maybe next year you can be a little bit more stubborn and like I said, be beholden to what you want to be, creating an identity. But identity naturally forms. You don't want to push back too hard against it. And they've adopted more running the football, which I think is great. Now, like we talked about, personnel usage, I think could use a little bit of work, certainly. But Anthony Hankerson is having himself a really nice stretch of play. And credit to him, man. As Coach Prime mentioned, I think it was, I think it was 2 weeks ago in the postgame. I think he was just saying, look, Hankerson, or it was after the USC, excuse me. It was after USC in the postgame. He said Hankerson stepped up, and credit to him, because that's a player, along with all of the returning guys, the few that did return, that, I mean, look at how many players with high pedigrees came in. Kvassier Smoke, Alt McCaskill. Now, McCaskill hasn't been able to get off the ground, and clearly they think he's probably still dealing with some of that ACL recovery issues, and they just do not want to put him in a bad spot, which you can't really blame them for that. Interestingly enough, he was the first player back to the locker room tonight. Did not look all that pleased. Kvassier Smoke gets 1 carry. I don't understand that. I don't. Why? At that stage, why? A running back needs a rhythm. You need 5+ carries at a bare minimum to see if this guy's even rolling right now. I mean, he's had 2 carries on the season, maybe 3. I think it's only been 2 though. What's the point of that? And it wasn't even like you needed somebody because it was a long drive. Somebody was tapping the helmet right. They needed a blow. No, it was just they kind of put him out. I think it was the first play of the drive again tonight. I don't understand why. Just roll back with Hankerson. Heck, I mean, I think, or if you're going to do that for Smoke, give him 5, give him 6, give him 7 carries. Like, you got to be able to see what the guy has. I think it's kind of unfair to give him 1 carry and expect to judge based upon that, especially behind that offensive line that, again, tonight, CSU was a rough performance, but tonight, I mean, Shedeur was under heavy fire, giving up, like I said, 15-plus sacks and tackles for loss. Coach Prime at halftime challenged everybody. He was furious with the team. He was talking about discipline. He was talking about stepping up and protecting the quarterback, right? He was talking about when is special teams going to step up and be special, and he brought that up at the Tuesday press conference. Kickoffs are a major problem. Oh my goodness, are they a problem? Palazzo is in there, the former walk-on punter who had to start last year for the Buffs because of their situation with the scholarship punter last year, I think getting sick and then transferring out of the program. But I mean, Palazzo's taking kickoffs and he's putting them out of bounds. I mean, how many kickoffs have they had out of bounds? I think they might have had on the road maybe 2 touchbacks this season. Maybe. I mean, it can't be, it's definitely not 4, and it might be 3, but they got to figure this out. I mean, as good as Mata is from in close, they got to figure that out with the next recruiting cycle. And speaking of which, I mean, halfway done with the season, that's going to be here. All the planning for next year will be here before you know it. So you have to start looking ahead, I think, as a staff to exactly what the needs are. And they obviously know what the needs are. In the trenches, both sides of football, offensive line. I mean, Hank Zielinskis started tonight. I don't know why. Maybe that was disciplinary for Van Wells. I'd be surprised. But that lasted all of 1 series, so that was very confusing to me. Juwan Mitchell also didn't really play, and I don't think he played at all in this game. It was Brendan Gant and it was Levante Bentley to start. Marvin Ham got in there. I thought he made some plays tonight. I thought he was very effective. One of the other few returners. Trevor Woods was out for this game. He got dinged up against USC. He had that collision with Brendan Rice and I think a few other moments in that game. So in his stead, Roderick Ward, the transfer from Southern Utah, grad transfer, got his second start alongside Shiloh Sanders, who returned, which good to see him back out there. He was in the non-contact jersey all week this week, and I'm not exactly sure how, close to 100% he is, but he was out there and he was communicating, which was essential for Colorado's back end. And Cormani McClain exposed a little bit early. They went back to Carter Stoutmeyer. He also returned, the fellow freshman corner, son of Omar Stoutmeyer, NFL safety. Stoutmeyer, in fact, blocked the field goal from 52 yards that ASU tried in that fourth quarter, which was a big play. He did get burned on the touchdown. He was the one who actually gave it up on the touchdown that ties the game. But he played well. And it's important to have him back in the lineup. Miles Slusher also returned as the star, right? The nickel back. He did okay tonight, just working his way back. I think he had a minor procedure. Coach Prime said after the TCU game they were going to take care of it, and obviously so they could have him back for the stretch run. Good to see him making his way back out there. Defensive line, Leonard Payne flashing a couple of times, but just not much to write home about against an offensive line in Arizona State. That was without 4 starters. What? You're without 4 starters and you can't create pressure on Trent Bourget? What do you think is going to happen against Washington State and Oregon State and Utah? And maybe even UCLA with a huge win over Washington State tonight themselves with a freshman quarterback. That defense is good. That defense is really good. You're going to have to be able to play a different level of football coming in down the stretch. And Coach Prime knows that. And the bye week could not come at a more perfect time. Now, you get Stanford on the short week. And Stanford kind of a cellar dweller in this conference this year. But that's a game they're going to come in all keyed up for. Everybody's keyed up to play the Buffs. I think we get that by now. In fact, as long as Coach Prime, is the coach of the Buffs, every opponent is going to come in keyed up to play this team. And you can't really blame them. That's the truth, is you can't really blame them. You've got to handle business against the teams you're supposed to beat if you want to reach your goals. Now, like I said, I think 4 to 5 wins was my preseason expectation. I always said anything less, maybe somebody got hurt, maybe it was a bit of a disappointment, maybe something went wrong. 4 to 5, really successful season. Anything more, gravy. We're getting really close to the gravy portion, right? It's already been a win. The program's been turned around, as Coach Prime mentioned in the post-game presser following the loss to USC. If you can't see the direction that Colorado football is headed, you're crazy. Well, I mean, I think everyone can understand, but there is a point where someone actually brought this up to me tonight. Well, what happens if you swap out Shedeur Sanders for Brendan Lewis? What does this team look like this year? How far away are they then? And quite frankly, that's not even a notion that I want to entertain, and we shouldn't. But the truth is that there is a little something to that, in that this team, as Coach Prime mentioned on First Take several weeks ago, needs more dogs. He said 7 to 8. I think it's at least that number, right? Offensive line, defensive line. I think you need a few more at linebacker. Secondary is pretty solid. I mean, as long as Travis Hunter can come back, and as Coach Prime mentioned in his Tuesday press conference this week, he wants him to be out until after the bye week. So because Colorado was able to get the victory tonight, I think you feel just fine not playing Travis Hunter against Stanford. Give him another week off, targeting October, I believe, 28th against UCLA on the road for his return. And by doing that, he'll be out for more than 2 months at that stage, which I believe for a simple laceration of the liver, which I'm not, at least privy to the details of that injury. That is standard recovery time. And look, getting him back is going to change a lot of things, but I think this is a good wake-up call tonight for not only the team, but the coaching staff. You got a ways to go, and I know they've known that, but it's a little further than you think. It's a little further than you think. And the intentionality, I believe, by some of the individual position coaches, that's got to be kind of keyed up. Like offensive line. And it's not to call out Bill O'Boyle necessarily, because I think that he was handed a really bad hand, right? I mean, if you're playing cards, that's a bad hand. You're going to need to, if you're playing Hold'em, I'm giving you at least 3 back, okay? Quite frankly, the guards have not been up to snuff. Not having Tyler Brown has hurt them this year, and certainly it'll be a big boost for them next year. But they're going to have to figure out a way to scheme around that a little bit more. And I think Shedeur running the football, I think running the football between the tackles with Anthony Hankerson on first and second down. I love using Dylan Edwards. Mix him more into the screen game. Get him more involved in the passing game. Heck, why can't they both be on the field at the same time? If you're constantly rotating a fourth receiver that you can't really find anyone to stick. Yes, Omarion Miller had that breakout. Why can't Dylan Edwards get more of those snaps as well? Shout out to Mikey Harrison. I think Mikey Harrison has stepped up and become a heck of a football player for this team at the tight end position. The former walk-on receiver converted to tight end, now the starter. Tim Brewster's done a really good job with him, and he continues on a week-to-week basis to be a focal point of this offense. Altogether, defensively, look, I thought they stepped up in a game that they had to step up to win, right? They only allowed 24 points tonight, and Arizona State's offense is not dynamic. But after the first drive, they did a good job getting Arizona State off of the field without turning them over, which isn't something that we've seen very much this year. And that's something that you expect to see from Colorado's defense, and have needed to see, quite frankly, the last several weeks, is that they needed to have a bounce-back performance and play a role in the win. And they certainly did tonight, because if they didn't hold up as well as they did, quite frankly, Colorado would have had a bigger hole to try and dig out of, because the offense just wasn't clicking. It just wasn't. And they know that. Shedeur was, very happy with himself after the game, said he went Brady mode. Look, he's got the clutch gene. But the fact remains that this offense against better teams right now isn't where it needs to be. And that's a problem. And Coach Prime knows it. It's why he was so upset in the post-game presser. It was as if they lost the game. Like I said, the most mad that I've seen him so far in his tenure in Boulder, and probably deservedly so. He's held a lot of that in. And again, he let them have it at halftime, and he came back, and the guys ended up responding. And I do want to say, look, in the Pac-12, it's not always going to be pretty. And while, as he mentioned to a reporter tonight, he said, I'm sorry, I've got expectations and a standard, right? I'm sorry I have a standard for how we want to play around here. And while I think that that's an amazing attitude to have, and finally a Colorado head coach has that, it's wonderful to see that, I think it's also a good wake-up call, because it's not easy to win at this level, and it's not like he doesn't know that. I'm not saying he doesn't know that, but having firsthand experience and dealing with some of this adversity on the road against a team like Arizona State, it kind of gives you a greater appreciation of just what you have left to accomplish here, right? And obviously you want things to go smoother. And I think the biggest issue for him is why the messaging isn't hitting home, because he's right. They're way better than they've shown. Like, they're way better than they've shown. For some reason, there's a disconnect. I think it's schematics. Like, if you're so spread out and you're allowing so much pressure on Shedeur Sanders, and you can't generate an intermediate passing game because you can't hold up long enough to let your routes develop, to let these concepts play out, well, let's change things up. Tighter formations, let's bring everything in, let's utilize the middle of the field, right? Let's do things a little bit differently. And I think it's just taking Colorado too long to get there. There's got to be a better recognition. And like I said, are you beholden to what you want to be? Or are you adapting to what you need to be? And I think there's a little bit of a case of being beholden to what they want to be. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing until you realize that adjustments are necessary, because the defense has figured it out, because either you're too one-dimensional or you're just too easy to figure out because you haven't changed up your scheme, because it's constantly playing east and west, speed and space. And I love speed and space. You have the athletes for it, but you got to have something else so everybody's just not sitting out there. If they're going to present you with a 4 to 5 man run box, run the football, pound the rock till they load the box, then go outside. Shedeur said it on Tuesday. He said, I learned we got to do the 101 stuff before we can do more of the exotic stuff. You got to walk before you can run. One foot in front of the other. And they've got to find a better way at, in real time, taking advantage of the easy stuff. I don't know if that means putting Sean Lewis upstairs. Like, I don't even think that that's a realm of possibilities, but it's, hey, maybe just look at it from a different perspective, right? And again, whatever it takes mentality, run the ball with Shedeur. And Shedeur, don't lower your shoulder, man. I love the toughness, but we don't need that. Maybe on a third down. Nobody's asking you to do that. They'll slide, right? And the ironic part about that is normally you say, well, you don't want to put your quarterback in harm's way. Well, shoot, he's in harm's way in the pocket. What's the difference? I mean, honestly, it'll probably even relieve more of that pressure, because the defensive line, much like we saw against USC, Bear Alexander, Solomon Burke, Mason Cobb, those guys cannot pin their ears back because they have to be ready for the threat of the quarterback run. And I thought it was really effective in neutralizing a lot of what USC likes to do up front. And tonight I thought it would have been more effective. And in fact, it was effective in the fourth quarter. But if you can do it then, you ought to be able to do it earlier. But you can't be hesitant and resistant to it. The read's not there, just tuck and go. I know you want to play, over the middle in the pocket, delivering on time. That's great. You don't have the line for it. And when you don't have the line for it, you got to help them out a little bit. So if you make some of those plays later in the game, it'll become easier to step up and throw from inside the pocket. But that being said, I thought Shedeur was great to finish this game tonight. Massive throw to Giovanni Antonio on the first down there with 50 seconds left. He led 2 touchdown drives there in the fourth quarter that I thought were really, really impressive, and did enough to keep them hanging around. Now, you hated giving up the field goal at the end of the first half because you were getting the ball back after you just scored a touchdown first out of the locker room. Unfortunately, they did. It almost ended up being a really big difference in this game until Colorado's offense came alive at the end of the third quarter after having gotten sacked so many times that during a defensive possession, Shedeur sat 35 yards away from all of his teammates and was sitting there and very frustrated. You could see it visibly from even as far up in the press box as we were. And he was asked about that post-game, and he said, nah, I was just thinking. Well, Coach Prime was also asked about it post-game. He's like, no, he's pissed off. Yeah, he's pissed off, and understandably so. If he had the time in the pocket that Caleb Williams or Drake May or Michael Penix, or go down the list of the Pac-12 quarterbacks, the best quarterbacks in college football, if he had the time that some of those guys are getting, think about what his numbers would be. I mean, look at his numbers as is, as the most sacked, the most pressured, the most hurried. The kid is really special, really special. They got to do a better job of supporting him. And honestly, maybe part of it is him to come out. I don't really know. But I'll tell you who else doesn't know, and that's Coach Prime. And I think that's part of the reason why he's so despondent of what's it going to take to get through. My only advice in that respect would be just keep trying things. right? Eventually, you're going to get through. Why? Because you got the right character in that room, and you got the right leadership in the room. And maybe it's going to take until Travis Hunter comes back for that to happen this year, simply because the chemistry that he and Shedeur possess and the confidence that he instills in his teammates by his mere presence alone on the field can play that big of a role. But you can't have that be the case next year by just, that dependent on one dude. You can't. Even as talented as they are, right? Like some of these other guys, Jimmy Horn, he had a good game tonight. He wasn't his best tonight. Xavier Weaver, huge punt return. Special teams was really bad up until Weaver. That, I believe it was punt return, kind of went left there, and 49 yards, set up Mata for the 24-17 field goal there that would give Colorado the touchdown lead, forcing Arizona State to need 6 and then eventually 7. But you need your skill position players to step up and be those guys. But you got to have Sean Lewis put this team and put Shedeur Sanders in a better position to succeed. You just do. And the offensive line, I understand Coach Prime's frustration. I just don't know how easily solvable it is outside of scheming around it. Like at this stage, you can't just expect it to be better, but you do have to question why it's not getting better and is it getting worse? I know they didn't have Savion Washington tonight. Reggie Young was in there, but it's not that. It's interior is a problem. And I think, well, first of all, I know they know that. I don't know how they address it mid-year outside of scheming around it. So we'll see how they play out. Again, short week. Stanford on Friday. Going to be another nationally televised game from Folsom Field. I can't wait. It's going to be awesome. Another night game. I was confused why this one was at 3:30. I guess the East Coast views. But again, Pac-12 Network. Next week's going to be ESPN. Again, that video over 30 minutes talking over the lawnmower. Nobody wanted to listen to that. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next week from Boulder.